Good morning. I've really been taken with the pine trees. I couldn't help but taking a photo and asking Google to verify whether I knew what kind they were or not. Ponderosa pines are quite amazing. I'm sure there are a lot of other varieties too. It's so lovely to be in the forest. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. I live in the forest. I live in a redwood forest. So we have redwoods about like we have ponderosa pines here on our property, on the property of the monastery. And it's not quite. Redwoods are a little more in rings, a little bit different, but gives you a sense of not being so large. Those huge trees kind of gives some perspective. Last night I talked a lot about the ways in which we can maybe take some different perspectives on ourselves. And today, this morning, I want to talk about the gradual path of development that we all have the opportunity to take, to really come to a place where we suffer a whole lot less and ultimately not I can't really say not suffering at all, even though those people that I know who I'm completely convinced have come to the end of the path, and they say that you're still going to have bodily pain and different kinds of suffering, but the mind has developed so much that that idea of being the witness to it just makes it possible to easily be with whatever it is without any greed, hatred, or delusion left at all. And of course, that's not what we mostly experience. And whenever you get together with a group of people like we are here right now, there's always going to be somebody who's grieving, who's lost a family member or a good friend or their health or wealth or something significant. There's always going to be a few people like that in the room. And I'm pretty sure there's always going to be some people who have a fair bit of fear, a fair bit of anxiety. There's always going to be some people who have experienced quite a lot of trauma, or whatever amount. You can hardly be a human being without experiencing trauma. It's a traumatic existence to be in the human form, in this mass universe. It's the way it is. And of course, we also experience so much beauty and joy and happiness. And the teachings, the Dhamma, we talked about this truth, kind of the way things work. This is universal and timeless. I want to describe this gradual path of development that takes us from being burdened by those experiences of human life and caught in them to a point where we're really free from suffering. And it really is, in talking about ourselves, our relationship to ourselves, This is about developing our character. And it's all choices. There's no requirements, but it's choices that each of us can make. We can't choose or control a lot of the things that happen to us. We can't control other people. Tomorrow night I'm going to talk more about the tangle with others, but we have some amount of control over what we say and what we do and what we think. Now, a tremendous amount of what we say and do and think comes out of our conditioning. It feels automatic. I remember a talk that the abbot of my son's monastery gave once, where he was talking about anger. And apparently there had been some kind of altercation in the monastery among the monks. That's usually when you get a really good Dhamma talk. Seriously. And he said, you can feel like anger is just automatic. It just comes up. And depending on our conditioning, that's more or less intense. But that really is depending on our conditioning. And I'll get to the punchline of that in a minute, but so much of the time we feel bad about things we do that are really just coming through our conditioning. And until we can step back and really observe that conditioning and start to make choices about how we want to act, it's really not fair to beat ourselves up over that. Okay, that was a little aside. Back to the abbot. He was talking about anger, and he said, but actually, what we do out of anger, keeping that anger going and acting on it, that's volitional. That's a choice. He said there is a point, even in that intensity of that feeling, there's a point when you decide to go with it. And he said, what we need to do is put a wedge of awareness in there. I like that wedge image, like you get that thin line just kind of interrupting that process, and then gradually it gets thicker, and gradually you come to a point where you don't have to go with it, no matter how deep the conditioning has been. This is a real change in a person. And there are so many ways in which I've changed in my lifetime. I'm so glad I found this path. And I want to say that, I'm going to talk about the three main processes involved in this gradual development. And the first one is about, actually, let me make that 4. As soon as you start the path, and in our life in general, one of the things that's important to learn is generosity. As we practice giving to others, and over time you can even learn that it's about giving to yourself, because the more we start to observe ourselves and observe others, we don't see as much distinction between the two. And when we can give to others the same and give to ourselves, whether that's love or compassion or kindness or things or help, support or kind words and encouragement, all of it, as we develop that ability to be generous, that's a huge help in our character development. It teaches us how to let go. And the Buddha even used the same words in Pali to describe what happens when we develop generosity. as he did when he talked about what happens when we awaken. It's letting go. And the process, this gradual path or training that I'm talking about, really, if you look at it, it's a process of letting go more and more of all kinds of things. That's part of what brings so much relief and freedom. Okay, so now, the three pieces we usually talk about are Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. Those are the words in Pali. Sila is morality, virtue. Samadhi is meditation, practicing the mental training. And Panya is wisdom, developing wisdom. And I want to talk a little bit about each one. So the Sila part, the development of our morality, it's grounded on the 5 precepts that I talked about the first night. Avoiding killing, avoiding stealing, avoiding sexual misconduct, avoiding lying, and not using drugs or alcohol. And it's a process, okay? So let's look at the first one, killing living beings. First of all, the Buddha talked about all of these with relation to what the results are that come back to us. He wasn't like moralistic. He really saw karma. He talked about it in terms of what does this create for someone when they do this thing? What happens here? So, killing living beings, I mean, I grew up on a farm and it was quite common to kill living beings. Fortunately, I didn't have to do very much of it. But as you can imagine, it's very much a part of the life. And animals, thanks to some of the kind of religious ideas, are for human beings to make use of. It's the kind of attitude. And so they're raised for food, of course. They're raised for work. If they don't provide that, they are done away with. It's kind of brutal. Feels brutal when you look at it from the outside, that's for sure. If you take that first precept and you start to not kill anything, any living being, the way the precept is worded in Pali, Pana Tipata, you said it probably the other night. Pana is the same word as prana, like breath energy. You have that life force energy. So anything that breathes, we want to not kill intentionally. So it's a process. So it's not like it's not like some commandment where if you do this, you're going to hell or something. It's more like if we start to observe how we feel, we start to observe what the results are. And we won't know maybe until we step away from behaviors. So like when I think about this gradualness of it, let's say you're a big game hunter, okay? Any big game, you don't have to admit that. But if a person who did that, that was a thing for them because of their own conditioning, then the first thing they would do when they took this precept is they'd stop doing that. And they would probably notice a difference in how they feel. And my first encounter with people who didn't kill anything was that first time in the monastery where my son was living. And it was really like, from my conditioning, a mosquito lands on you and you smack it, right? Or whatever. And we had an interesting experience. I was teaching a retreat a few weeks ago at Spirit Rock, and there was a rattlesnake that was hanging around. And they had this little sign, like a sign that you'd see like on a wet floor, you know, like a little A-frame thing. And it had rattlesnake spotted near here. And this rattlesnake, you know, you'd see the little sign over here, and you look, and there's this like 6-foot-long rattlesnake hanging out in the landscaping, you know. And then it would be on the terrace where you walk through, or on the road, or then the sign is over here, and then over here. And I'm meeting with a small group, and this woman says, "I can't believe this. I'm from Texas, and you just killed them." And it's like, yeah, I mean, this is the conditioning, this is the mentality. And then to see that, you know, there were 100 people on that retreat. And we all could walk safely through the whole area into the building without bothering this rattlesnake, and this rattlesnake didn't bother them. One of the bhikkhunis saw one person very mindfully walking, not realizing they were about to step on this rattlesnake. This is something about mindfulness that should be considered. Open it up a little. And she stopped her. But, you know, it's like a mentality that changes. And I noticed that first month I was in the monastery, taking the spiders outside, sweeping the ants and putting them outside. I wasn't sure how much that really meant to them. You know, does it matter if they live another day or month or whatever? I don't know. But for me, my heart started to change. I started to feel more gentle. I started to notice that, and I could be more gentle with myself. So this process is something you get to experiment with. The Buddha's not saying, you have to do, no, nothing like that in his teachings. It's all experiment, try it out, and see how it feels. And then look at the process, see what's happening. Give it some time. The second precept on not stealing, okay. Most of you probably haven't committed grand theft, but if you did, that's also part of the conditioning. But there are a lot of little things that are in a gray area in all the office supplies at work, or a little something with the taxes. Or I had this friend who was working she was watering plants in office buildings in San Francisco. And when she picked up this precept, she was like, oh, that bowl of candy on the counter, that really isn't meant for me. So she stopped like just nipping the candy bowl, you know. And she said there was one office where they said, they were so kind to her, and they said, every time you come, you are welcome to a drink out of the refrigerator. Please help yourself. So she would do that, and she would say, okay, I'm taking my drink. And they're like, yeah, that's great. And she said the feeling in her system, you know, she felt the clarity, and she felt good. And this is kind of how it works. And then the third one, the sexual misconduct one, in the Buddhist discourses that we have, which are incredibly reliable, those early teachings that he gave, they're transmitted so beautifully down through all these years. And that's not really a topic right now, but there's really beautiful evidence of how well they were preserved because of the different routes that they took very early on into China and into the South, thousands of miles apart for thousands of years. And then just in the last century, scholars have been putting that together and seeing how closely they're the same. It's so inspiring. However, what constitutes sexual misconduct can be very socially dependent. Is it okay to have 2 wives or 3 husbands or, whatever? I mean, simultaneously. There are cultures where that is the done thing. And as long as it's not harming anyone, but of course, any kind of violence, any kind of abuse, any kind of anything that would hurt someone. And even if I'm living in a culture like where it's very, very common to not be monogamous with your partner, it would still hurt somebody, maybe everybody. So with this precept, you start to really pay attention. And we become safe. All of these 5 precepts, if we all kept them, or any of us, when we keep them, we become reliable, dependable, safe, solid, steady. And we feel that in ourselves. This is the development of our character. And truthfulness, wow, what a major way to have confidence and clarity in ourselves and that dependability for others to really work with our speech. A lot of people tell me this is the hardest one. That's what my mother used to say. That's the hardest one, especially at her age by that time. She came to the monasteries with me. For about 8 years, she came every year with me. She was tough. She'd sleep on the kind of like a thing like this in the forest with a mosquito net. Yeah, she grew up on a farm too. She's way tougher than me. Anyway, speech is the hardest one. And what I've found is, if the way I started was I'd say something and, okay, it wasn't quite right. It was a bit of an exaggeration or something. And then I would stop and just say, wait a minute, that's not quite it. I'll say it again. Really coming from truthfulness to the degree I could come from, just as much as I could. And so this is something that these are all an ongoing process, right? Of learning and development. And then the last one, refraining from drugs and alcohol, I'm so glad the Buddha put that in there. In my experience, using alcohol and letting that go. And I didn't do it because I took a precept. I did it because I was practicing and things were developing, and I just came to a point where it just didn't fit anymore. I'm like, I don't want this. It's like my system was taking on a different vibrational level, and that just wasn't it. And it was grateful I did it that way. And sometimes people say, I can't take the 5 precepts because I like to have some beer or have some wine or do whatever. And I say, okay, take 4.5 precepts. Or take 5 precepts for a week and see what it's like. And then go off of it for a week and see what that's like. This is not about, you're a bad person or something if you do this. It's like, this is our life can be an experiment, a laboratory where we get to learn how we want to be. We get to see the results for ourselves. We get to see how it affects other people around us. So what I find, because I was raised in a kind of fundamentalist Christian environment, you can easily carry that conditioning over and try to overlay what the Buddha taught. And so it's useful to see when that happens, to have a lot of guilt around something, or there's no guilt in Buddhism. As one of my Bhikkhuni sister said, there's no crying in baseball, there's no guilt in Buddhism. So, I don't know, you may have to be a certain age to even really get that one. I don't know. But to remember that it's a real learning process, a process of discovery of yourself. And the way it ties back to our suffering is that when we develop this level of clarity and purity in our way of doing things, we also are freed from a lot of entanglement. Like if you don't lie, you don't have to worry about what you said, and you don't have to get found out. And the same with stealing, this, and you start to see how much simpler life becomes. I mean, when I was single mom, raising my kids, working in high tech, it was pretty anxiety in producing. Almost any job, like you can really feel anxious about it, or whatever, right? And I think there was a fair bit of imposter syndrome. Like you're kind of expected to show up like you know everything. And who knows everything? Nobody, right? And so beginning to move in the direction of showing up the way you are, honestly. And if there's parts you don't want to show, then maybe those are the ones you want to change. And you have this ability to make those changes. So to be able to show up and feel like there's nothing you need to hide. There's nothing you need to act and put on an act or a mask for. Think about what it's like to go around in the world without any pretense. You can do this, but take your time. Try things out. Protect yourself with loving kindness and care and compassion and respect for yourself. So that's the moral virtue part. And then there's the samadhi part, the meditation part. And everybody's mind, we have different kinds of minds. So when you hear, okay, you should be able to get still and get rid of thought, and it should be like this or like that, and then it's not like that. And sometimes I think it probably won't be like that. To start to reflect on, is the meditation technique that I'm using really working? Is it the right one for me? And it's good advice when we hear, to stick with something for a while, to see how it is, but we're different. We do have different characters, different qualities. My mind doesn't want to stop thinking. It wants to think all the time. And it does stop sometimes with samadhi. Mindfulness of in and out breathing has been really beneficial for me, and you can become very calm. But there's another way to use thought. Instead of trying to suppress it and shut it off doesn't work. But using the breath or using a meditation object to really bring that tranquility into the body and really calm the body, and then bring that tranquility to the mind, and just much more softly, not pressure, When you're trying to do something, it doesn't work in meditation. If you're trying to get something, it doesn't work. The things that happen that are helpful or inspiring in meditation usually happen, it seems like by accident almost. And then people want to get that again, and then it doesn't work. Because this goal-oriented approach that we're so trained to have in the world is the exact opposite of what we need for meditation. For meditation, it's more about letting go. So if you have a mind that doesn't want to stop thinking, then you can train it to think in ways that help you develop wisdom. So it's really like posing a question to the mind, or having a question in your mind, and then not answering it, not trying to figure it out. Just let it hang there. And then let that answer come up from inside. I don't know if you've ever had this kind of situation where you've got a problem and you're trying to figure out how to solve it. I had this a lot in high tech, of course. You're programming, you've got some bug in the system, and you've tried everything. You've looked at all of the usual places. You've tried to sort out what's going on, and you can't find the answer. You haven't been able to fix it. And you leave work, and walking home or in the shower, or sometimes something will come up and it'll go, oh, that's what I have to do. Okay, so I don't know if you've had that, some form of that in your experience, but the answers to what is wisdom, who am I really, those kinds of questions, the answers have to come up from that depth of your conscious awareness. That's where it comes from. It doesn't come through reasoning. So one way to practice meditation is holding that kind of question in your mind. And just listening to yourself, listening to your mind think. It's like you're in that hut watching the snowstorm, the emotional thing happening. That's one way of observing, but you can also observe your mind thinking. It's like, oh, okay. Wow, you're really upset about that, aren't you? There's a part that just can be so wise and watching, like I feel like there's that wisdom part, and then there's the part that's like 5 years old, it's like doing whatever. And so it's like we can find ways to strengthen that observer, strengthen that wisdom part, and open up to what we have never known before. So when we practice the moral virtue and we practice the meditation, then we also practice the wisdom by asking these questions. And the Buddha talked about this very early on. Like the second Dhamma talk he gave was about questioning who you are. Non-self is really the distinctive teaching that the Buddha gives. And you see it in other religions too, sometimes in certain ways. And this, what the Buddha taught is, like I said, natural. It's available to everyone. Like sometimes the 5 precepts, people say, well, when you take the 5 precepts, then you're a Buddhist. No, when you take the 5 precepts and you follow them, you're a decent, reliable human being. It doesn't make you Buddhist. The Buddha wasn't Buddhist. It's not about identifying with something new. Oh, you can. I mean, I like being a Buddhist. It's kind of obvious, but it's like you don't have to. You don't have to. Just experiment and see for yourself, and to be a decent, reliable, trustworthy human being is such a gift to yourself, to everyone else. And then the wisdom starts to come through. You know, am I this body? Wow. Hope not. It's on the decline, man. I'm 71 years old. How much longer is it going to be around? No, that's not who I am. But who are you? I don't know if you've ever done this exercise. My Qigong teacher had us divide into pairs and sit there and, you know, one person asks the other, who are you? What would you say? You know, like, oh, I'm a mother, I'm, you know, my name, say my name, and I'm, you know, I'm from wherever, or whatever, you know, I do this work, and, you know, like all the different identities, all the different things we identify with, who are you? And then whatever I say, then the person says, who are you? And then you kind of strip off that layer and you go to the next one. And they keep asking, who are you? And, you know, in this Qigong class, it was really learning about energy, right? I mean, it was pretty cool. You learn how to feel energy and how to move energy. Like right now, I can feel the energy between my hands. When you practice a lot, you can feel the energy coming from someone else's hand. And pretty soon you start to realize that everything's energy. It looks so solid. But we know it's made of all these atoms, right? With these electrons, and there's a bunch of space there. It's not really solid. And the Buddha said, it's not really going to last, is it? It's impermanent, because it's constantly changing. And there's a process within everything that has kind of an expiration date. This body has an expiration date, I just don't know when it is. And so I know that can't be me. And I look this way, I've got this face. That's not going to last. So who am I? What came through in that particular experience was this column of energy going through me. Sometimes you think of it as your center core. And then the thought, the wisdom, this is the same column, the same core of energy for all living beings. That was trippy. We really aren't separate personalities. Yeah, we are on the conventional level, but not on the ultimate level. What we are is Dhamma. Call it pure consciousness. Call it nature. Call it whatever you call it. We can't really describe it. But we can develop this conventional personality, this living being. Yeah. What I want for myself and what I want for each of you is complete freedom from suffering. And it's possible. It's not far away. You don't have to practice 100 years. What we need to do is open to it. See things differently. So I imagine you have questions. I hope so. And those can be questions that maybe there isn't an answer to, logical, rational answer. But that's what helps you develop that wisdom. You're going to get a chance to ask questions, 2:00 every day. And in the groups when we meet, and a couple evenings from now. Keep investigating. Like the chanting we did this morning, that probably could bring up a lot of questions. It did for me. It's like, okay, I get that aging is suffering. I get that death is suffering. But birth, why is birth suffering? And I'm like, I don't think they mean what you go through when you have a baby. There is a lot of suffering, I gotta tell you. I was like, oh dear. My mom, she said after my brother was born, she said, I was afraid because I didn't know what was gonna happen. And now I'm gonna have the second one, that was me. Now I'm afraid because I know what's gonna happen. But I knew that wasn't the point, why birth is suffering. So I just walked around with that question in my mind. And eventually the wisdom arises. It's like this column of energy that is the same for everyone. Sometimes the logical mind can't even wrap itself around what you learn from those depths of your, I don't know what, consciousness. That again is the same for everyone. We all have access to this wisdom, to the Dhamma, to see the way things actually are. We all have the opportunity to let go of the conditioning that's been layered on us. We can recover from trauma and the things that have happened to us. Fully. So, questions are great. Just note whatever it is that doesn't make sense. Sometimes you can experience things in meditation that when you come out just don't make sense, but you know it's true. One time in an altered state of consciousness, none of which comes from drugs, by the way. This all happens naturally. You don't need a substance. We don't need to rely on other things outside of ourselves. They're all unsatisfactory anyway. And in this altered state, I knew that time is just a convention. It's not real. We just need it in order to kind of organize in this dimension. Come out of that state and it's like, I can't really explain this, but I know it's true. And when it says the Dhamma is timeless, yeah, time is just a convention. We are in conventional reality in this state. All these kinds of things that we think are real are really not so real. But we are making karma through our actions, through our speech, through even our thinking. Well, when you put energy to thought, then you make karma. Thoughts that just pop into your head because of whatever is old, even those memories that you feel bad about or whatever, that's just old stuff. That just comes through like tuning a radio. Does anybody tune a radio anymore? I don't even know if people can relate to this metaphor. it's like, but you know how it is when, you know, whatever you were getting through the station, you can't control that. It's the same way with your mind. You can't really control that. Don't feel responsible for what pops into your head. Feel responsible for what you chew on, what you ponder, what you decide to give energy to. That's where your volition is. That's where your choices are. The Buddha said you can train the mind to the point where you think what you want to think when you want to think it. Nice. I'm not quite there yet. But I can be present with whatever's coming and just listen to it. And maybe that's how it is. You know, just that wisdom part, stepping back enough to look at, oh my, look at that. You know, or feeling some flash of jealousy, go, whoa, look at that. Didn't know that was in there. You know, or whatever. Don't feel bad about what just flows through you. Just let it flow through. Don't act on it. Don't make more of it. Don't feed it. Feed the good. You're good. Really. Feed that.